Ben Shapiro is undoubtedly an intelligent and influential commentator. I've always liked and respected him, even when we disagree. And I still do. He's stridently partisan and staunchly conservative, of course, but he's willing to criticise Trump and others in the administration when he thinks they've got it wrong. Well, one thing he doesn't criticise, however, is Israel. And he routinely gets very upset when other people do.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't have any flexibility when it comes to Israeli issues. I think he's Jewish, so it's kind of a tribal thing where Israel does no wrong, which is fine. I mean, I'm not, and these guys are very quick to call you anti-Semite if you disagree with Israel. I mean, you can lose your job. You can lose your job for even doing a reaction video.
Such a blind spot for Ben that through the red mist of his rage, he sees an alternate reality where anybody who disagrees with him is a demonic, America-hating terror apologist who can only possibly be doing it for ratings. And it was brought to my attention that he was very upset about a debate last week featuring Dave Smith.
So last night on Piers Morgan, which is the Jerry Springer of political television, where people gather to throw chairs at one another and determine paternity. Piers Morgan, who has sort of made a mockery of the entire industry by putting on screen whatever dregs are still willing to go on screen with Piers Morgan. He had on Dave Smith, who has, apparently his job is never to tell jokes, but to instead give poorly informed foreign policy takes. And also to hate America. Here we go.
Well, first, Jerry Springer was a very good friend of mine, and he was a beloved national treasure who actually hosted one of the most successful shows in television history and became a media mogul worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So thank you for that comparison, Ben. Second, we proudly host lively debates on things that people care about, featuring guests that people care about, to cover both sides of complex news stories in an engaging way. Do the debates sometimes get a bit combative? Yes. Do audiences tend to enjoy a bit of theatrical rough and tumble? Of course they do. That's why the Daily Wire, Ben's company, has an entire political debate show which is literally called Bar Fight. That's why Ben's own show features hard-hitting segments including Ben Shapiro destroys celebrity ice reactions. Ben Shapiro destroys the Golden Globes. Ben Shapiro reacts to woke TikToks. Ben Shapiro reacts to woke socialist TikToks. Ben Shapiro reacts to woke religious TikToks. And when it comes to humiliating the industry, please tell me why the Pulitzer Prize Committee did not reward Mr. Shapiro for this masterpiece.
What the run?
You could say that makes a mockery of the industry. Third, I want to examine the charge that I've committed a sin against journalism by hosting what Ben Shapiro describes as whatever dregs are still willing to appear on my show. Well, on the subject of Iran and US foreign policy specifically, recent guests have included Masih Alinejad, Lisa Daftari, Patrick Bet-David, Carla Sands, Rob O'Neill, Goldie Gamari, Jonathan Conricus, Alan Dershowitz, Alika Lebon, Ambassador John Bolton, General Wesley Clark, General Mark Kimmett, a former UN prosecutor accusing Iran of mass murder, Ambassador Mike Huckabee, former Vice President Mike Pence, Eric Weinstein, Josh Hammer, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, and the IDF spokesman Nadav Shoshan.
I would say that's pretty diverse, even leans more conservative. Alan Dershowitz probably a bit more in the center to the left, but PBD is there. Mike Pence, who was a vice president, has been a bit of a critic of Trump, but really Republican. A lot of military guys over here too. Mike Huckabee, I think, is currently serving as the ambassador to Israel. He's over there. John Bolton, who is a real hawk and supports this war, is there. So, I mean, I don't think anything Piers Morgan does on his show is unfair. I think he's really one of the only shows that allows opposing voices on. Even people that hate each other get on and debate the issues. there's not a better show that does what Piers Morgan does. None of Ben Shapiro's production lines would even match this. More generally, you can say that Piers Morgan is providing a more centrist platform in terms of the platform, even though some people say that he's conservative and he says to people that he's liberal. That might be different in a British sense, but it doesn't matter. At least he provides a platform that allows for people of diverse viewpoints to debate the issues fair and square. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Johnny. Now, it's unlikely that Ben is talking about any of these people because they are either vehemently pro-Israel or to some extent they are supportive of attacking Iran to destroy its regime. It's also unlikely he's talking about, say, Michael Knowles or Isabel Brown, who make very valuable contributions to the show on a regular basis and do, of course, work alongside Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire. So what is he really talking about? Well, we know he doesn't like Dave Smith and flat out refuses to debate him, which strikes me as pretty cowardly. You can make up your own minds about why he refuses. And what Ben really takes issue with is that among the many guests supporting his worldview, and specifically supporting Israel, we also invite many people who don't support his worldview and don't support the Israeli government.
Take Piers Morgan, of course, suggesting the only reason that I was not appearing on his show anymore was his criticism of Israel, which is weird because I appeared on his show for literally months after October 7th, even though he was already critical of Israel. And I really haven't said anything on Piers or about Piers or to Piers for probably a year. I just stopped appearing on his show. Why? Well, honestly, he kept bringing on actual Nazis and the Nazi adjacent and then treated them all too often as voices worthy of a large audience. Like, for example, these people.
I believe that Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to America, and I think it's the greatest threat to the world today. I truly believe that.
You think Hitler was very cool?
Yes, I do.
One of them.
And I'm tired of pretending he's not.
It's going to be the headlines tomorrow. Piers Morgan, Israel is ISIS.
Only amongst people who weren't listening.
That's how I feel about those young men in Gaza. You ask me why I won't condemn them. Because those young men were born into...
So some of these interviews, I actually watched them in real time. And you can tell, anybody that has watched Piers Morgan can attest to this. If I'm right, put it in the comment section. That Piers typically would push back against people like this. Like people that say the extremists or the extreme things that he disagrees with, he would push back on it. And if it's a panel, there's going to be somebody on the panel that is going to push back on that. To say that Piers platforming these people is wrong, it's not fair. I mean, what happened to freedom of speech and the freedom to even debate these issues? I want to hear from people that think that Hitler was cool. I may disagree with it, but I want to hear why they think so that I can also learn from it. Because sometimes a lot of this history is very distorted, and it helps when you have other people expressing things that you may not have known, and to consider or not to consider it. It's up to you to decide what you're going to do with that information. But at least hear them out. And it's not malicious or dangerous to listen to people even if you disagree with them. And this is what Ben Shapiro is trying to imply here. He's trying to imply that Piers Morgan agrees with these people because they were on his platform. Even though from these same videos, Piers Morgan did push back on the ones that at least I have seen.
A concentration camp.
Israel has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel right now is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people.
Listen, it's Piers' choice who he decides to have on his show and how he decides to conduct the kind of clown car battle royale that he does on a show every night. And it's my choice not to join that circus. We all make our choices and we all live with them, but some of us make our choices based on, actual principles and not the clicks.
Well, the last time Ben Shapiro appeared on Uncensored to discuss Israel's war on Hamas specifically was in March 2024, at which time I was being accused on a daily basis of being a paid-up Israeli shill. It's ironic that the clips he showed were not from our so-called battle royale debates, but from long-form one-on-one interviews, which we do a lot of the time. And it's outrageously disingenuous that the clips he showed did not include the parts of those interviews where I called out every single one of them about things I didn't agree with. His montage of the same interviews could have looked like this.
You sound like a Nazi.
I mean, why do you say that?
That's literally what Nazis would have said in World War II. You think if half your family had been wiped out by very fucking cool Hitler, you'd still think he was very fucking cool? Or would you think that actually he was a despicable monster who murdered 12 million people? The comparison, which is more apposite, is ISIS and Hamas. They are both nihilistic terror groups intent on killing as many Jewish people and others as they can possibly kill. That's not true.
As the numbers, okay.
It's just not true.
Piers.
Well, Professor, with respect,
okay, I'm not going to.
It's not true.
Piers.
Yeah, so you can see in all the examples that Ben Shapiro showed, Piers Morgan did actually push back. All of them. Each one of them, he pushed back. But this is, this violates journalistic ethics. But this is also YouTube and social media, and nobody really cares about journalistic ethics. But you can't just cut out a part of a video to make a point, knowing very well that Piers Morgan did push back on all the examples that you used. He could have made his point without necessarily misleading his audience, which is what happens when you're an ideologue, when you just follow an ideology and you have no flexibility and no room for debate. This is what happens when you do that.
This country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians, the horrific story
Well, they weren't
of what
pretending
happened.
to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust.